Whether it's around the country or your town or county, decisions are being made every day that impact real people and real communities. Welcome to the Rural View, where we open the window for you to view Wisconsin farmers and rural residents and get a glimpse into the challenges they face.
Well, we're ready to roll with another episode of the Rural View podcast. And so I'm here with my co-host Jim, and we're going to make it really confusing today and talk to another guy named Jim. Jim Hebbe's here with us, Green Lake County Farm Bureau member. Welcome, Jim.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't we just start off by getting to know you a little bit? So just give us a little overview of who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, my wife Valerie and I have our farm here in Green Lake County. We live close to Green Lake, about a 1,300 acre corn, soybean, winter wheat, and also green peas. We grow for crops. I've no-tilled for 40 years almost, and done a lot of work with cover crop experimentation through the years. And so a lot of conservation. I was a land conservation director for Green Lake County for 30 years, in addition to farming. And I certainly can always tell everyone for sure what not to do, because I've made plenty of mistakes. So
that's how we all learn, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's awesome. So I guess just to start off, I like to ask this question sometimes. Like, did you always know that you wanted to be a farmer?
Oh, yeah.
Or, what is your connection to agriculture?
Well, yeah, I grew up on a farm, and my folks, we lived right next door to my grandparents on the farm, and so I always was the farmer out of my parents' kids, but everyone had their chores and duties on the farm, but it stuck more with me, and I always enjoyed it. I went to UW River Falls and studied that, but then, when I got out of college, we were really in the midst of the early 1980s farm crisis, and so the smartest thing to do, I thought at that time, was to have the security of a off-farm job and then farm all the other hours of the day, doing your farm work. And so that's kind of how I got into it. It was a lot of work through the years, and so it's a lot nicer now that I'm only farming. Makes for a little less
just farming.
just farming.
Can you touch base on, you've been doing no-till for a number of years, and probably before it was, the in thing to do. Can you kind of touch base as far as what tricks and what got you into no-tilling, and then obviously the conservation part of it, and the other aspects that you've done up in Green Lake?
Sure. Yeah. One thing kind of always led to another, but in my case, starting out with nothing, the thing that I always wanted to do was have good equipment. And so what I always found was that, well, if you're going to have good in everything, that means you're really spending a lot. So everything always kind of pointed back to no-till, because it's just that much simpler as far as equipment ownership, because you focus mainly on your planter, of course, sprayers and different things like that. But it kind of lent itself very well to that. But still, the real driving force always through it was understanding the importance of the soil and wanting to protect it. So being an ag economist, I was always looking at the money angle of it, but there still always was the love of the land and concern that, we're doing what's good for my pocket, but also good for the soil.
Is there anything, we have different programs, obviously, in different counties, but is there one thing that you would tell somebody that would be interested in maybe doing more no-till or cover crop, or maybe some things that you should do and maybe something you shouldn't do at all?
Yeah. Start slow. Do your research, know where you're going to be sticking your neck out, and play it always kind of safe. And that's always what I did. I never turned into a fanatic of I'm going to do this to show that it can be done. It was just always about showing myself that I was comfortable in doing something. That's really always what I thought. I think farmers have that natural ability always that they have to believe and trust what they're doing is the right thing.
Oh, I was going to say, I think a lot of times too that we hear a lot of, sometimes farmers are nervous about trying new ways of doing things because the numbers are so tight, right? So I think for someone who's been doing it so long, uh, one can argue the numbers are always going to be tight, and if not getting tighter by the year. How do you what do you say to them? Is I think that's a serious concern and something where you want to do what's right by the land, but you also want a paycheck at the end of the day too. So what's that balance look like?
Yeah, well, the balance is always that you have to always be thinking about efficiencies and economies of scale. And because in the long run, that's how you can grow your farm, and eventually, in my case, I always had a kind of an target or an idea of acres wise, probably what I needed to farm and farm comfortably to be economical. And so you kind of need to, when you're going into it, you need to kind of ask those hard questions of like, all right, yeah, I like the idea of doing this, but is the land base available, or how am I going to go about getting that land base? What's the confidence that my banker has in my skills and abilities to meet, repayment obligations and all of that. And so you need to do all that. And you always you're reading, you're talking to other farmers, anything comes out from the University of Wisconsin in all the various ag school departments. I'm always reading it. It's even though I don't have livestock, I actually still kind of read up on things about livestock because I understand that Wisconsin's ag economy is very dependent on and with livestock production. So I just can't bury my head in the sand and say, well, I'm a grain farm. I'm not going to even pay any attention to that. No, I'm certainly going to pay attention to that because it's related or it impacts my business.
Can you talk a little bit about some of your other jobs and roles that you have in the community?
Oh, sure. Well, of course, I'm on the Farm Bureau Board of Directors, and I've done not a continuous stint on the board, but 40 years I was on the State Young Farmers Committee, District 5 Young Farmers rep starting out early in my Farm Bureau career. And the other organization that I'm involved with currently is I've been a board of director on the Green Lake Association, which is a local lake association dedicated to protecting and improving the water quality of Big Green Lake. And in Green Lake County here, that lake, Green Lake, provides just the homes on that lake is 60% of the tax base for the county. And so as a farmer, and wanting to have good government services, a highway department that can plow our roads and all the law enforcement, all of the real important functions of certainly county government are those tax dollars that are coming from those homes just on that lake really take the burden off of probably what otherwise would be or result in a lot higher taxes on our farms here. So it's very important to me that we do everything possible to have that lake protected because it's kind of the golden goose in our community here, and we need to remember that.
What are some of those programs that you're doing then?
Well, as an example, the Green Lake Association, numerous projects, and the one project that we did for several years is we had a farmer lake owner day, and it was a 1 day event where our participating farm or host for that farm, we would show many of the conservation practices and things that farmers were doing for water quality protection of the lake and everything. And it served to invite the lake owners because, through all my years working at the land conservation, it was always the classic of when you go to the farmer, a lot of farmers would say, well, what about the guy on the lake? Whether it would be a septic or fertilizing his lawn, he's the guy doing the lake. And when you went and talked to the lake guy, they'd say, well, it's all coming from the farmers. And of course, you always just had to say, well, we're all in this together. And that farmer doesn't want to be losing nutrients or certainly the soil resource of their farm, just like you don't want to be polluting the lake because you're the first line of defense here on it. So the idea of that field day always is to try to build that bridge so that everyone kind of had a good, or at least a better understanding of where farmers were coming from to make their business decisions and make a living. And then likewise, for farmers to understand, why people are going to be very emotional about protecting that lake. Many of those people are been very successful in their life. And so they have a higher expectation of what water quality and recreation they can enjoy with that lake. So it was always a good event. We didn't do it last year, and we're not doing it this year, but we're changing it up a little bit because the Green Lake Association now has a staff person, John Strausser is his name, and he's working. We just were awarded a producer-led watershed grant from Department of Ag. Not very big amount, about $28,000. But the point is that we've got this group of farmers, and the Lake Association is still involved in helping us to get the producer-led program going here in our county. And so Pete Batke is on the board of directors of that producer-led group, myself, and then one other farmer. And we're really hoping that, just like a lot of the producer-led groups, if not all of them, where you just really kind of get farmers kind of talking about, here's some of the conservation issues or things that we'd like to try or see how it would work. And that's where we're at right now. We're accepting applications from farmers who want to try something unique or outside of the box slightly in their conservation goals. And so we're really looking forward to that. And the Lake Association is really supportive of that as well, because you have to always have the person that's having to live with decisions are made of the land. They've got to be comfortable in knowing that that's right. They're telling themselves, I feel good about this. And I'm buying into this. And that's how you kind of really get the ball rolling always on conservation, because in the end, it's not really, a lot of times you're going to say, well, what's the dollar? What am I going to get for cost sharing? And in the end, and this is coming from a farmer who I was a Leopold Conservation Award winner back in 2012, but you have to have that commitment in your mind of knowing what you're doing is right, and that you're not doing it just to get a payment or a check from the government or whomever. You're doing it for the good of your land, and also for your pride of wanting to be a positive influence in your community. And so that's really where you want to go with a lot of these initiatives that we're doing, is that we just have to get people looking at it that way. And it's easier said than done, but that's what we want.
I've always been curious, Jim, about the initial conversation with the Lake Alliance. I know you guys have been in contact and good partners for a while, but did that first initial conversation come from being proactive and just introducing yourselves to each other, or did it come from a confrontation point? Because I think a lot of times it comes from a confrontation point when it should be that proactive point.
Correct. Yes. I don't think ours was confrontational here. It was proactive. The way it really happened is that the Lake Association sent out a mailing looking for donations to the Lake Association. And our County Farm Bureau received that letter, asking us to join. And so what we did instead is we said, we're on board with, your efforts, but why don't we work together on something? And the Lake Association thought that was great. And so it was really, Dave Wilkie was our county president at that time, and that's kind of where he said, he goes, just saying that you belong to something or saying that you support something certainly isn't bad or wrong, but it's sure a lot better if it's like, no, our goals are just like yours, and you may find out the same thing, that your goals are just like ours. And so that's kind of what farmers need to always be thinking about, that a little bit of like, you know, you know, build the bridge, think about what can we do to have a good conversation about this. And I always, for a large part of my working career in land conservation, always was, before you're ever going to get conservation, you have to have a conversation. And the Farm Bureau board here really did I mean, we just follow that to the T of like, yeah, this is how you go about trying to get something positive developed.
It's always good when you can work together with somebody rather than against them, or tell your story and make things work. There are some of the things that some of the projects that you're working on with the farmers. Is it planting cover crops, or can you
Yeah,
fill us in? Let the rest of us know about what you're doing up there.
sure. This goes back all to the Green Lake. Actually was the first selected priority watershed program in the state of Wisconsin. This was back in the early 80s. And when I started at Green Lake County working, the watershed, they had just terrible sign up because there was some distrust. It was a DNR program, but you also have to remember, it was in that early 80s. That's just that economic collapse in the farm economy. And so,
Right.
here you had everybody wanting to improve the lake and stop non-point pollution, and it was kind of the perfect wrong storm brewing at that time. Well, anyway, when I started in with that, the real thing that we had, the local sanitary district for Green Lake, was that they actually had a program, because this is the early 80s, and I mean, guys maybe want to do something, but it was tough. And the the state cost sharing was usually 50 to 70%, and the local sanitary district, which is a taxing authority, they provided cost sharing that always brought that cost sharing for the farmers up to 90%. And
Wow.
at that point in time, that's what it really, you just had to get something like that going, because, when I just go out and talk to farmers, and they just look and say, I know where you're coming from. I like this, but, you know, um, it was just a tough time. So anyway, that program that started then, and it has carried on through all the years. And so even today, the local sanitary district actually has a staff person working in the local land conservation office and working specifically in the Green Lake watershed. And the same thing, they're going out and they're talking to farmers, and they're saying, here's some of the traditional cost sharing programs, but here's how we're stepping in and really making it into a good deal. Um, if farmers are putting in some practices that maybe there's a concern about operation and maintenance of it, the sanitary district likewise will step in and help out on that. And so, that's over 40 plus years that local sanitary district has really helped back up a lot of the state cost share programs. And state programs come and go, but the sanitary district kept that commitment.
What do you see most of the farmers up there doing? Is it cover crops that they're putting in? Is it year round? Is it buffers? Is it, I mean, what's part of that program?
Well, the change that happened over the 40 years here is that, there was a time that you you just you drove up and down the road, and at least every other farm was a dairy, if not everyone on some roads. And of course, that has changed. In our county, we have as many dairy cows as we've ever had, but it's on a lot fewer dairies. And of course, the ones that are still doing it, they've grown substantially larger. It's just the economies of scale that have and quality of life issues and everything. And so the change in that watershed is that vegetable production is big because we have local vegetable processing facilities in the area, and that's always been there. But specialization, economies of scale means that we have some farms out there that they 90% of their acreage is devoted to vegetable production. So for those producers, in addition, because sometimes growing those vegetable crops, they have to be taken out at the fleeting moment of perfection. And if you have a field of sweet corn and we get 3 inches of rain, it's they they have to take that corn out, and the farmer's not happy about it. The canning vegetable processor isn't happy about what they're going to do to that soil, but it's just a fact of life that you're going to rut up the field a little bit, and it's just always been that way. So it always ends up, the important thing then for the farms is still trying to figure out ways to keep that soil health as good as they can. And so certainly cover crops are important. And that we have vegetable growers, one in particular. I mean, as long as I've known him and his father, they've always been experts in growing cover crops as a part of their vegetable production system on their farm, and it's played out very well for them. And so in the watershed, it just ends up that there's just a lot of different components. And I always tell everyone there's never a silver bullet in protecting the resources of your farm. It's always going to be numerous components, hopefully one complementing the other. That's how you really get conservation. So you just can't go into it saying, well, we know till we don't have to be looking at anything else. It's like, no, you're probably going to have to, you got to look at the rotations, the cover cropping, possibly terraces if you have long slopes. You may need water and sediment basins to either contain water in an upper area so the down area doesn't get blown out, grassed waterways, you name it. A good conservation farmer is always going to be looking at their farm as a resource, because you're a resource manager when you buy into this whole thing of
Right.
wanting to be a farmer. And so you always just have to be honestly looking at it and saying, well, am I managing this resource in the best way possible? And of course, then that's the beauty of having professional staff of NRCS or the Land Conservation Department, in addition to the UW extension. There's a lot of partners and players in this arena that we're in, and you have to be thinking about how you can have them as part of your farm. I always talk about my team. In farming, you develop your team of experts, whether it's in, crop insurance, a guy that when I need work done on equipment, I have that expert. And so I'm always thinking about the team on my farm, and I'm never afraid to tell those people that, you're a part of the team on our farm, and I really value their input into the decisions and paths that we take in the farm here.
I really love how you phrase that, because it's true. You can't do it by yourself. You have to invest in those resources and help people that can help you make the best decisions you can. I was gonna follow up with, you're a former Leopold Conservation Award winner, and if people have been listening this long, they probably would say, "Huh, that makes sense," because you're just so passionate about conservation, Jim, and that's just really truly amazing. But what makes your farm interesting? I think obviously the conservation practices set you apart to win that award, but what's kind of a unique aspect of your farm or what you do there that made you a winner of that?
Well, I have a little bit of everything on our farms. Our Princeton farm, we have a class 1 trout stream on it, and the springs for that trout stream start on our farm. And growing up as a kid, when I had friends come out from town, the city, we didn't sit in the house and watch TV or play on Nintendo. First of all, because it wasn't around then, but we just had we we headed down to the creek, which was about a half a mile from our house, and we would walk through the pasture, and in that walk through the pasture where my dad had Herefords, and some were pulled and some weren't. And so when they would see even the cow with horns, they'd say that's the bull because of the horns. And I went, no, no, there's another unique feature to know who the bull is, and we don't have to get into that, but you know, so we it was the all my friends, they would do this. We go down to the creek and we'd take some rocks and move them around to kind of build the water up and do all that. And what is still always interesting when I have my class reunion, I'll still have somebody say, "How's the creek doing?" They'll ask that question. I say, "Well, as good as it can." And I always say, "But I got a lot of work to do on it. And if you want to come out and do a project, I go, you're welcome to come out, And of course, everyone will tell you they're going to come, and everyone's busy in their lives, and no one's shown up yet. So that's unique of
Maybe
that
someday
time.
they'll be there.
But all of my farms have just something, whether it's a spectacular view. Actually, both our Brooklyn farm and our Princeton farm both have spectacular views, and we just have a mix of a little bit of everything. And so it's it's everything that I appreciate in a farm. So I'm just always love to be out here.
Yeah, you also probably get a good taste of all the different soil types we have in Wisconsin too.
Oh
Maybe you're
boy.
reined in a little bit more, but I feel like that's a good conversation point amongst Wisconsin farmers to claim what kind of soil that they have, because we just have so many different aspects of our soil here in the States.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got sandy loam and loam and silt loam as well, of course. Yeah, so I get a real good education about the differences between the capabilities between the various soils, and that's always the challenge and the art of farming, is that knowing the realistic capability of a soil and saying, well, that's what this ground can do for us. And that's always why making sure that we keep that soil here and doing everything that we can to, improve it and certainly have it better for the next generation. You're always going into it with that understanding that that's what the deal is.
I wanted to just maybe pivot a little bit more. You mentioned your Farm Bureau involvement, being on the Young Farmer and Agriculturist Committee, and being on the county board. So why are you involved in Farm Bureau? Why is that important to you, and why have you taken on those leadership roles, and what are some of your favorite experiences that you've had in Farm Bureau?
Oh, wow. Well, it first of all, anytime you're in an organization and everyone's kind of coming from the same point, even though, every farm is different and every farmer is different, we still always kind of have that common bond. And it's like, yeah, we're producing food. And that, of course, gardeners could say the same thing, but we're just on a different economy of scale here with what we're doing. But Farm Bureau, likewise, before when I was talking about the team for our farm, everything that Farm Bureau does for our farm, it's like, yes, that's right. I have someone on our team that if we have a legislative issue or something, it's like, no, I have a real good process and group of people that I know that we can go about it. And, the real neat thing always about it is that, if you're just kind of wanting to be in your own little world, that's probably not the way to go about being successful legislatively, I guess, unless you had an awful lot of money that you could buy your influence. And so the beauty of Farm Bureau is that, if you look at the resolutions process of a grassroots organization where it's like, you know, I have this problem. And many times just through the years, you could see people that would have something and I would hear their problem. And I'd be like, wow, didn't never thought about that, or a type of a problem that like where you see it, and that's a good experience for you to be talking to other people who might be having those problems or struggles, and it's a good learning experience. And so just through the years, just all of the wonderful staff always, we're going back thinking of, Roger, Cliff, and just all the fun conversations that you could have with people talking about, like, okay, this is the idea. What are the realities of this? And you would have that Farm Bureau staff person say, "Yep, I see your angle," but because they were a lot closer to the fire in that legislative arena, they would tell you about the realities of it. And so that that's very valuable as a farmer because, boy, time's precious. And so it's like, if I just want to tell the world about my problem but not do anything to get it solved, it's kind of like, well, for me at least, it'd be like, boy, I'm not down for that. It's like, you know, if there's a problem, hopefully find if somebody else has that same problem, then you can work together, and then Farm Bureau can be your voice and the action to deal with that problem or issue. And so uh, it just, you know, I go back and, I just remember when we just always had the stop campaign in Farm Bureau for years and years, school taxes off of property. And and then of course when use value assessment came into play, even at the time that happened, I really, myself, I did not, being an ag economist, I did not fully realize how big a deal that was going to be, certainly down the line. And boy, when you think of what your property tax bill would be right now if we were paying full value of farmland and everything, I mean, that's that's for me, that's real scary, especially in these.
Yeah, we wouldn't be farming here. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah,
No way
that,
we could have farmed in Waukesha County, anyways. I
right.
mean,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's crazy down here.
yep. Yeah, it just would make it way too expensive of an endeavor to even consider it. And so you're right, Jim, that,
No,
it was a big deal.
it
It was
wouldn't be
really a
able
big
to
deal.
afford it regardless. I mean, we had a similar situation in our area. They put sewer right along in front of the farm and some of the land, and they wanted us to pay for the sewer and water to go past the farm because at some point in time we were still milking cows and they wanted us to hook up to city water. And I said, well, if you're going to have us hook up to city water, we're going to hook up the slurry to the sewer line and we'll see how much
Yeah,
you like that. They
right.
kind of changed their mind after that. But it was a matter of talking to, people in Farm Bureau and other people that have been involved in maybe possibly something like that. And that's what always surprises me. Like when you go in December to the annual meeting, you always come back a little bit refreshed. I do anyways, that boy, I guess the other part of the state is having issues too. I mean, I don't have elk in my yard, not yet. Let's hope not. But I mean,
Right.
I don't have, there's so many different aspects of agriculture and farming, and Farm Bureau helps to bring all that together and try and, you know, put all that together. And it sounds what's nice about Green Lake and the Alliance and stuff like that. You guys are kind of doing that same thing as Farm Bureau with Farm Bureau help, and
Yeah,
it's awesome to see because we all need to have that.
absolutely. That's right. And, farmers always need to be thinking about the non-farmers. They are our customers. They're consuming our product, and so that's why
Yeah.
you want to talk to that customer and say, this is our concern. We want to give you a good quality product, and we also want you to know that in going through all of that to give you that quality product, this is how we're likewise concerning for the resources that are very important to you. As an example, if you're living on the lake, because we understand the importance of that tax base of those lake properties. So my grandma always had that one line. She always said, "One hand washes the other," and um, that's
Yeah,
pretty true.
it's very true. And I the other point about this, especially in your area with 60% of that revenue, you have to it's also good for you and the alliance to not only show them but explain to them because otherwise, it's hearsay or whatever. And when somebody asks them, why is Jim doing it that way, they can explain it. So that web gets
Yes.
bigger and bigger. So
Right.
it's awesome that you can
Yeah.
do all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fun for me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other
Mhm.
farmers. You just got to be thinking about it that way. It's like, you know, well, shouldn't you always be trying to do everything? Just, well, let's, we got to do what we got to do. But geez, if we can make it fun, it's sure going to be a lot nicer doing it. So,
Well, right. And you can be
Absolutely.
proud about what you're doing, and
yeah,
that's what's awesome about all that is you can be proud and you can strut your, be like a peacock and say, well, we're doing this and this is why. And here's why we're doing it.
yeah. But all at the same time, though, too, is the other approach I always tell everyone that a lot of times what we thought was good or what we were doing, things change and everything. And it's like, yeah, well, we thought this is what should be doing or wanted to do. And we learned and found out that, there was a better way of doing something or change course. So I always tell everyone that when I'm evaluating things happening on my farm, I'm probably the biggest critic here because I'm going to look at it and say, it goes back to your old 4-H motto of to make the best better. And, so you're just always gonna, uh, for me, I'm always gonna be looking saying, well, what can I do to make it better? And so every year in farming, it's always unique and there's always something that's going to change or you're going to be doing different. And, so I always, embrace the challenge of change, think about it or approach it that way.
Being able to pivot when you need to or change is sometimes difficult, but it's also can be very rewarding and you learn from it as well. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
if you didn't change and you stayed the same, then you're not growing. You're not
That's right.
changing.
Yep. Absolutely, Jim.
All right. Well, Jim, do you have any more burning questions for the other Jim? I still can't believe I did that to myself.
Well,
I put two Jims on the same screen, but here we are. Otherwise, we could do
I-
quick fire.
I think we got to do quick fire.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you want to do it or do you want me to?
Well, we could probably tag team it.
Okay.
Jim, do you
All right.
understand what when we say our quick fire questions?
Well, I assume you're going to say dog and then you want me to say cat or something like that, or
Well, not
is that what you mean by quick
necessarily.
fire?
Right. They're just going to be quick, random. I'll get the first one is chocolate milk or white milk.
Oh, white milk.
White milk.
Really?
White.
Now, this is
Oh.
obviously one of my favorites.
Purist.
One of my favorites is red or green tractors.
Well, we're all red here, so
Yes.
I just always think about the reaction outside of our screens. Like, is someone booing in their car at this moment? Is someone like, yes, he's one of us? I'm always waiting to know what people are wondering after
Well,
people
right.
give their answer.
I always say you put the green in the bank and the red in the field.
yeah, red in the shed.
Right. If it ain't red, leave it in the shed. We
Yeah.
could go on and on. Do you prefer planting or harvesting?
Boy,
You can say both too.
I think that is 50 of, I've been asked that before. And of course, it's, in the spring, the cash is flowing out. In the fall, it's coming back the other way.
Hopefully.
What? Spring planting I like because the days are still getting longer every day. So I really like longer days and sun. So I think that's a 50-50 split here. So each one has got to have both. You got to have both.
That's right. That's right. You have great points on both of those, and I think I could agree with you totally on that. Amy, how about you? You have any questions that you want to ask?
Oh yeah, I have
Quick
a
fires?
couple here. Yep. So what's your favorite holiday?
Christmas, pretty easy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say we are a little bit farther away from Christmas though, but it is a good way to end the year. Also, the next one I have is what is your favorite sports team? Who are you cheering for?
Well, in the fall, I miss a lot of viewing of Packer games, but I listen to Wayne Larrivee and Larry McCarron always on the radio. And so the Packers just come in that number one way. So the Packers are my number one sport team.
They do some darn good radio coverage because I too am on the road a lot in the fall, and I gotta say their radio broadcast is almost just as good as TV.
Yeah. I enjoy it, and I always like that feeling of listening to the game and listening to their, the description of the game, but yet focusing on the harvest at hand in the field. So, that kind of always just works out that way where it's like, in the fall, it's like, boy, we want to just be harvesting and everything's moving so I can stay in the combine and take in the whole game listening to it. So that's the ideal Sunday.
Yes, that is my favorite time of the year. I call it harvest and football season, and it's really, you can't get much better than that. All right, my last question I have is, what is your favorite Farm Bureau event?
Farm Bureau what?
Favorite Farm Bureau event.
Oh, event. Oh, well, the annual meeting. Easy.
I feel like I have to switch that one up. Everyone says the annual meeting.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a good time of the year.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Yep. And there's been a few times where I've gone to the annual meeting and not been done with harvest. And then it's not as fun because you're at that meeting going, I should be home.
Yeah. Yep.
It's
You're not the
happened.
first
I can
person
remember
that
one
said that.
time my son trying to combine beans because we had a short stretch and we had one field we had to finish and rain was coming and they had trouble getting the head off. And so I was in between meetings and it's challenging when you have to go away to the annual meeting and still have crops out. But, sometimes it feels good to get away and maybe not forget about it, but put it off to the side, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. And hope that you don't run into people that are saying, are you done with it? And because you don't want to answer the question.
Then you just say, well, we're just about done. We got one more field. That one more field could be 250 acres, but you don't have to tell them that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're done enough.
Make it sound like it's 5 acres. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think we can wrap up there. Thank you again, Jim, for joining us and sharing a little bit more about your farm story and your Farm Bureau story, too.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It was fun to just kind of be thinking about all the things that are, neat and important, in my life. And Farm Bureau certainly is one of them. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right.
That's awesome, Jim. Thanks a lot for all your insight on that. And hopefully come annual meeting in December, there might be somebody coming looking for you with different ideas or maybe something they want to share with in their watershed in their area. So
yep,
it's awesome.
Yep. Thanks. Yep.
I'm for sure going to ask Jim. I'm going to ask Jim if all his crops are harvested when I see him at annual
There
meeting.
you go. Okay.
Farming is more than a job. It's a way of life that comes with tough challenges. That's why I am proud to be a member of Wisconsin Farm Bureau. They've helped me grow as a leader and prepare me to face whatever comes next. And now I'm part of shaping a better future for Wisconsin agriculture by making my voice heard. Let's grow together. Become a member today.